Thank you all for attending today's session. We just wanted to make a small, brief presentation about doing business with UF. We just want to give you an introduction to the procurement process and best practices. Once again, my name is Rejoy Verghese. I am a buyer here at the University of Florida. I mainly handle construction, MRO, which is maintenance, repair, operations, agriculture, vehicles, things like that, and even law enforcement supplies. So, which basically means anything that relates to any of these categories comes through my queue. I tend to review it and approve it based on the needs of UF. Excuse me. Okay. All right. So today we'll just be covering a few points. We'll be talking about who we are, procurement department in general. We'll be talking about our mission and vision. We'll be talking about the general procurement process. We'll also be briefly talking about the supplier portal. We'll also be talking about competitive solicitations and getting paid and a few additional resources as well. So we'll just keep it short and simple, and we'll also give you time at the end to ask questions based on whatever you hear, or if you have any other questions that's not covered in today's session. As you know, the University of Florida is a public institution. So the procurement services is a department that is under the CFO's office. We have a mission. Our mission is to support the University of Florida by providing service, acquiring the best value, and mitigating risk. How we do so will be covered in the following slides. And our vision is actually to set a standard of excellence by creating partnerships with customers and leading innovatively in strategic sourcing, contract management, and efficient procurement processes to facilitate the UF mission and to create outstanding value for the university. That's just a brief snapshot of why we exist and what we do. As Juan mentioned earlier, the procurement services for the University of Florida is actually decentralized. What does that mean? Even though I am a procurement buyer, I do not make the decision on what to buy. The UF has over 600 departments with purchasing authority, which means basically every department can make their own purchasing decisions. However, what that essentially means is they pick the supplier. It comes to procurement to approve and review and to issue the PO. So UF has over 15,000 staff and faculty, and the student numbers fluctuate often, so I don't want to quote anything over here. So if you want to do business with UF, your best point of contact would be those individual departments who actually need your products and services. So procurement can point you in the right direction, but we are not the ones who's picking the suppliers for every department that exists on campus. Having said that, beyond these 600 departments, there are entities that are outside of UF. For example, SHANS is a separate entity by itself. The Athletic Association is another separate entity by itself. So we have no say in who they contract with and who they pick. Those are all separate legal entities outside of UF. So just within UF is huge. It's big. We just want you to let you know that it's the individual departments that pick who they want to work with. Um, but having said that, the procurement service is the primary contracting authority for the university, which means if there is a contract to be signed, we are the ones who have to review it and to sign it. Even in terms of contract values, we can review and sign contracts up to $1 million. Anything about that has to be approved by the office of the CFO and possibly the president's office as well. Also, a caveat to that is if there is a consulting contract and if it's above a certain dollar amount, that will also have to be reviewed and approved by the CFO's office and the president's office as well. The procurement services, we report to the chief financial officer of the University of Florida. For those of you who don't know, we are building the picture that you see there. We are located just off Radio Road. The building is called Elmore Hall. Small business and procurement services are located in the same space. So just so you know that where we are on the campus. All right. So we'll get to the details of how um, the buying process works at UF, and this is exactly what we tell every department. This is based on public procurement rules for the University of Florida. Um, Nothing here is new to anybody, whether you are already at UF or whether you're new here, whether you are internal department, all of these rules apply universally. Um, Generally speaking, anything up to $10,000, it's up to the department on who they pick and how they pick and all of that. We don't ask for additional quotes if it's under $10,000. In most cases, if there is a PO that's um, a requisition that's put in, the PO is almost automatically issued by the system. Um, if the contract value ranges from 10,000 or more to up to 149,999, um, three quotes are required. So beyond the service that they are picking, they would also need two additional quotes to show that the price that they're paying for is reasonable. This applies in for anything in that contract value. We generally ask for three quotes to show they have to demonstrate price reasonableness. How do we know that the price we're paying for is reasonable? We ask them to go and get quotes. So this is a rule that applies for anything up to that dollar amount. If the contract value is over $150,000 or above, that will require a competitive solicitation or a public solicitation. And I will get into that in a few slides down the line. But these are the general rules according to the spending limits that apply to all University of Florida departments. Also, we encourage departments to see if there is an existing contract first before they actually submit the requisition. And I will also show at the end of this presentation our procurement website to see existing contracts that have been awarded to vendors. Um, and also, the procurement website is the procurement.ufl.edu. I will show at the end how to navigate around the website and how to get to the contracts page. What we also encourage suppliers who are out there who don't have a contract with UF is also um, to see if you're able to get hold or get participate in a solicitation with any state agency, which includes state of Florida or even a county or even a school board. Um, all of those contracts, which are with public entities like us, we are able to adopt or piggyback off those contracts. So if you are looking for a contract and you don't know how to get one, if you have any publicly solicited contract from any state agency, from state of Florida, or from a school board or from a county, if you have that, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be able to guide you on if that contract is adoptable or not. There are requirements that we look into the contract. We read into the contract and see what it says, and if it's limited to a particular project or if it's broad in scope and things like that. But just want to let you know to keep your eyes out for any public solicitations by any state entity within the state of Florida, because we can all use each other's contracts if there is one. Again, we also advise our departments to look into past transactions. Then that's all done through our UF marketplace to see other entities who have done similar business with UF in the past, so that they know they have a point of reference. By the way, my UF marketplace is our internal site. You won't be able to see that. That this is where requisitions are submitted by departments, and that comes through a series of checks, and it finally gets to procurement when the PO is ready to be issued. So there are a number of steps in between, so just letting you know or keeping you aware of how it works in general. Now, I mentioned that we have the departments make these purchasing decisions. So in terms of a PO, anything above $5,000, it is mandatory that it has to be on a purchase order. So anything up to $2,000, actually, for that dollar amount, the department is able to purchase it on a P card, which means the payment is almost instant. However, if it's about $5,000, it's mandatory that the department has to issue a PO to the supplier to perform that service, and that applies for anything from 5,000 to 149,999. Not only must be on a PO, as mentioned earlier, three quotes are also required to make sure that the price is reasonable. And again, just so that you know the whole process, once the department submits, gets your quote, and they get the additional quotes, they submit it as a requisition, and this happens in the internal portal called My UF Marketplace. Based on the information that's contained in the requisition, that's reflected also in the PO that gets sent out to the supplier. So if there is information that you want to show up on the PO, please make sure that it's on the quote. If it's on the quote, it'll be on the requisition. If it's on the requisition, it'll transfer over to the PO. Um, Things like shipping or insurance or anything like that. If you want it to be mentioned on the PO, make sure it's actually there on your quote when you submit it to the department. And once UF issues the purchase order, that then becomes the contract between the supplier and UF. So again, we handle hundreds and thousands of POs on a daily basis, and a lot of it is just automatically issued by the system. So it's not always feasible for us to review every single contract and sign every single contract. So unless that's absolutely required, we don't get to do it. The PO which is issued to the supplier becomes the contract. So the PO purchase order has our terms and conditions that apply that govern the sale. So those are the contract terms that apply, and that is the contract. So we are not physically signing every single PO that we are issuing. It's system generated. That's the PO. That's the UF terms on the PO. If you want to be familiar with what the PO term says, you can find it actually on our website at procurement website, and you can be familiar with all the terms and conditions that applies, just for you to be aware beforehand, so that you won't be surprised when you actually get a PO. Any questions so far? All right, be good. Okay, I'll keep going. Okay. Now, there are times when there will we will request a contract for service. What is that? That's a specific contract template that we use specifically if we don't have a direct contract, and if there are services being rendered to the university that totals over $10,000. And especially if it's paid with federal funds, we need to have a contract for service. It's nothing more than a actual contract with certain things that which will be specified. Those things are like your rates, the dates that the service will be provided, and the deliverables for the service. Those will have to be specified on the contracts for services, which also has our UFPO terms and conditions. If you're not familiar with that, and if you think that you will be entering or providing a service over $10,000 with and if it's going to be paid with federal funds, feel free to familiarize yourself with that contract for service. It's also available on our procurement website, just so that you know that that's how it works. All right. Also, I just want to let you know that we have a UF supplier portal. This is where, excuse me, suppliers are able to register. Now, this particularly applies once you know that the department needs your service. You send a quote and you're sure that the department is going to pick you. You need to make sure that you are registered on the supplier portal. Doing this will enable the supplier to pick you internally as a supplier and make sure the PO is issued to your company, and that will also enable the payment process as well. So if you can literally search UF supplier portal, it'll take you to the website. You can see if you're not yet registered there, you can select register as a new vendor, a new supplier, and you'll be able to do that. And every year, we have a supplier maintenance team. Um, They review all the applications that come in and they approve it. Every year they will request a signed tax information form, and all of these forms that are required when you are registering you'll have to put it in. But every year they will reach out for an updated signed tax information form. Um, This actually new supplier portal enables you to register with the username and password. You can have multiple users under this portal. So not just a business owner, you can delegate an employee to register as well. You can see your vendor file once you register, and you can submit change request. If the PO needs to go to a different email address, you can submit a change request, or if any other updates of your business has changed name or changed addresses, things like that. It's a supplier portal that you'll need to go to update your information. Again, instruction guides are available on the supplier page. That's the link there. Um, and if you have any difficulties, feel free to reach out, and our supplier team will be able to. It's a small team. It's about 2 or 3 people, and we have a lot of suppliers who are registered. In case there is a delay in your supplier portal being active or your supplier registration being active, just give it some time. We have a small team handling a lot of requests. So just want you to be aware of that as well. All right. So earlier I mentioned about the bid limits. So anything up to 149,999, we can get away with 2 quotes. However, what happens when we cross that $150,000 threshold? Well, there is a particular regulation that applies. That's the Board of Governors regulation and University of Florida regulation, which basically states that all contracts for the purchase of commodities or contractual services exceeding $150,000 shall be awarded pursuant to a competitive solicitation. That's the regulation that applies. So it's uniformly applicable to all commodities or services across departments at UF. So we have to competitively solicit and award it for anything that's about that amount. Now, there are exceptions to this rule, and the exception mainly comes from the fact that if we already have a publicly solicited contract that was awarded to your firm from another state agency or a school board or a county, and if we are able to adopt it or piggyback off it, we don't need to do public solicitation. But that's like if you have one already. If you don't, then this is the next step that we have to do. So I'll explain this in detail of what it entails and how the process goes. Um, so there's 2 types that we use at the UF, both the public solicitations. One is called an ITB, or an invitation to bid. This is basically very specific. It's specification based. This is used when we are acquiring commodities or services that are well defined. We know what we are getting. We have the specs in place. We put that out there, and we ask for pricing to be submitted. Um, and that's what ITBs are for, which is basically invitation to bid. And then this is basically generally awarded based on price, if prices, and it'll be stated in the solicitation. It can also be used as an annual contract resulting in multiple orders. It can also be a multiple award contract where everybody who submits a bid could be awarded. So it depends on what the solicitation document states. Um, so this is what you call as an ITB, invitation to bid. Basically, once you submit your submission or a proposal to the ITB, the original ITB document along with your submission then becomes the contract. So there isn't a separate contract that is signed, but once you respond to a solicitation agreeing to all the terms and conditions that apply, that becomes and if you're awarded that then your the original ITB and your proposal then forms the contract. All right. The second type of public solicitation is your invitation to negotiate. This is slightly different in the sense that this is more flexible. This is not purely based on price. This is based on value. We look at what's the best value to the university. And so basically, we don't know the end result. We are asking for proposals based on what vendors are able to do for us. And then we ask, so we tell you this is what we want. Please submit your proposals to us. So if that's the case, there is basically we are inviting suppliers to propose their best solutions, and we can negotiate based on what you propose to us. So general advice, whether it's an ITB or an ITN, is to make sure that you read the solicitation documents carefully. I know it's generally a lot of words, but just make sure that you take the time and to read through the whole document to make sure that you know what's expected, what's being asked, what's the evaluation criteria, because we will basically be awarding based on who meets the evaluation criteria the best when it's an ITN. And we also encourage you to think outside the box, especially when we are asking you for proposals. Come up with all your proposals you can when there is an ITN. That's where you can show that you can do things not just not just on the standard operating system, but anything else that you can do above and beyond that will help your case as well. And there might be services that you can provide that UF is not aware about. So especially when you see an ITN, that's where you can put in time and effort to create a proposal that can come up with um, multiple solutions possible. Also, another tip is to make sure when you're submitting a proposal to an ITN, make sure you proofread. We often see submissions with a lot of mistakes and it doesn't help your case. Also, whether it's an ITN or an ITB, make sure that you are submitting it by the date and time that is stated in the solicitation. Once that date and time passes, we cannot do anything because it's a system generated lock that locks everybody out. So if today's the deadline and 12 o'clock is the deadline for submission, do not wait till 11:30 to submit your proposal because exactly at 12 the system will lock, and even if you are 95% submitted and if you haven't completed your submission, you will not be able to complete it at 12. So just want to remind you that if you are seeing or responding to an ITN or ITB, make sure that you submit it ahead of time so that you are able to put in your proposal before its deadline, before the deadline is due. All right. All right. I'm not sure how to get rid of the, oh, sorry. Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions so far? Are we good so far? Okay, cool. All right. So for public,
I have one question.
yes.
This Edward. So with the department heads, is there I know there's a list of all the department heads, but is there email and the department head on the website?
So we don't have a list of all the, I don't have a list as such. I don't know if Dawn can answer that better.
Yes, so there is no centralized list of all of the department heads. That's where I would strongly encourage you to have a meeting with us. That way we can walk you through how to do business from a technical lens concerning your department and then point you in the direction of different resources. So if you can go ahead and send us an email, Denisa, drop our email address in the chat box and we'll get you scheduled with a one-on-one meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So then what happens after a solicitation is after the deadline passes, what happens next? Well, please be aware that we are in a sunshine state. Florida is a sunshine state, so a lot of things are in the sunshine, which means if a request is made, we'll have to make certain things public. So you might have a question of what portion of the negotiation, if you're submitting an ITN, what portion of that could be public information. Well, we come under the Florida statute. So there is a Florida statute that specifically states on what can be made public. So basically, your response can be considered public 20 days after the solicitation opens or after your best and final offer, depending on the institution. Um, Generally speaking, if we are negotiating, it's not subject to the sunshine laws until and after the award is made. Each institution can make its own determination of how a record of the negotiation is kept. So basically, any negotiation that happens when there is a public solicitation, we have to record it. And if there is a request for certain things to be disclosed, we will have to disclose it depending on the request that comes in. We keep a documentation generally on quotes and contracts, agreements, responses to solicitation, all of which is subject to Florida Statute 119.071. I know generally when you submit your pricing for a solicitation, you would mark it confidential. We will keep it confidential. However, if there is a records request requesting certain documents, we have to comply with it. Again, we will reach out to your business first before we do so. We will make sure that we have your permission to share it with any regulatory authority before we do so. All right. So where does so how can so just for you to be aware of, we have a schedule of bids page, which you can access from our procurement page. This is what it looks like. This is just a screenshot of it. This is where the University of Florida's public procurement takes place, or this is where you can see right now, you can see there is a current open solicitation for pin setter system for the rights union. It basically provides information on what that is and where it is and all of that. So you can see it's an ITN. That's the ITN reference number for that ITN. And you can see the buyer who is managing it. You can see the date that it's open and the date that it's closing. The times are also mentioned over there. If you want to participate in any solicitation that's open right now, this is where this is the page you'll have to go, and you'll be able to register yourself from this page to respond to a particular solicitation. If you want to see previously closed or awarded solicitations, you can go to the awarded tab under that page, and that's where you'll be able to see the previous solicitations we have done. And you can basically download the solicitation documents to see what was asked and the requirements and things like that. If there's an upcoming solicitation, that's where you'll be able to see that as well. But generally keep an eye on this page. And again, you can get to this page from our procurement website, and I will also show you that in a minute once this presentation is over. All right, so once all of that is over, just want to make sure that you're aware of the process of getting paid as well. And this generally happens after a PO is issued. We don't generally, the departments will not generally require you to send you their invoices to them. We have a centralized system. It's a TrustFloat's email address. So it's ufl.invoices@trustfloats.com. We ask it to send your invoice as a PDF to that email and attach it to the email. And then you should also include the PO number if you were issued a PO referencing that invoice, and the 8-digit department ID, which you will be able to find on the PO that was issued to you. If you're mailing it, if you don't want to email, and if you are mailing it, it's a Scranton, Pennsylvania address that you'll be mailing it to, and that's the PO box number that you'll be mailing it to, and that's the fax number for UF. And this is purely from the perspective of getting paid once your services are rendered to UF. And this is how you would submit your invoices. You do not send it to procurement. You do not send it to the respective department that gave you the order. This is how you would do it in order to make sure that you're getting paid. Also, just general information, just to be aware, if you do get a PO from the university and it looks suspicious, double check, make sure that you're not getting a fraudulent PO. We've had that in the past where vendors were getting POs which were not issued by UF. So always double check and make sure that the department. So if you haven't given a quote and you get a PO out of the blue, out of the ordinary, be suspicious. That's a general word of advice to vendors who are new. And there have been cases where um, they weren't expecting anything, and out of the blue, they just got a PO, looks a bit dubious, suspicious email, whatever it is. Call, verify before you render your product or service to whichever address it's mentioned in there. All right, so that concludes my slides. I will exit out of the um, presentation, and I will actually try and see if I can show you the procurement website as well, if we have a few minutes. And
Yeah, I think that'd be great. And if you want to share your screen, would you like for me to continue recording or start recording?
you can continue recording, it's fine.
Okay.
Let me share my screen, share. All right, let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes.
Perfect, perfect. So this is the UF Procurement website. This is where you'll be able to see a lot of resources that you'll find useful. Up on the right-hand side is a quick link. There you'll be able to see um, basic information about doing business with UF. If you click on that, it'll take you right to this page. This is where you'll find general information about regulations, code of ethics, things like that. This is again referencing what I had mentioned earlier about fraudulent purchase order attempts, just for you to be aware. And then we also have a section over here on insurance, just for you to be aware. If you're coming to UF campus, if you're delivering a product or a service to UF University campus or at any UF location, we will generally ask for insurance. In terms of insurance requirements, you would find it over here in under doing business with UF. We generally ask for commercial liability, commercial general liability, automobile liability, and workers' comp. These are the limits: 2 million aggregate, or at least 1 million per occurrence for commercial general liability. For auto, it'll be at least 500,000, and for workers' comp, it'll be based on the statute. And again, if you every year your insurance certificate will expire, we will ask for a renewal. We have a link here for suppliers who already have provided us with a valid insurance. So in case you're coming onto campus and you haven't provided us a valid insurance, you can feel free to email it to procurement. We'll be able to have that updated in this file. Um, that's that. And generally speaking, so I mentioned that we do have contracts available on our website. So if you go under making a purchase, if you go under the contracts link over here, that will show every single contract that UF has with, and these are supplier names, the category of what it's under. This is the contract name or number, and when that contract is good till, and the final expiration date of that contract. Will also show you what type of contract it is, if it is a direct UF contract or if it was an adopted contract. So this one over here, John Deere, that's a state of Florida contract that we have adopted. So if a department wants to use that, they're able to use that. So this is where departments are generally instructed to go and check and see if there is a valid contract. And once we do a solicitation, once we award a solicitation, this is where we'll update it as well so that any department can know who they can do business easily with. If you want to see general UF procurement directives, that's over here under procurement directives and procedures. The schedule, the purchase order terms and conditions that I mentioned earlier, you can find that under doing business at UF and clicking on purchase order terms and conditions. That lists out everything that would be there on IPO. Also, how to get to our supplier, how to get to the schedule of bids page. That's where the public solicitations are open. So if you go to click on doing business at UF and click down over here to the schedule of bids, it will take you to a page that looks like this. This is a again, a page where we have archived previous awarded contracts over here. But if you come down, you can see, click here to direct you to the UF's solicitation page. If you click there, that's where it takes you. This is where public solicitations, you can see what's current. And if you click on the awarded, you can see the recently awarded public solicitations as well. Okay. All right. So that's the general overview of our procurement website. And this is generally where you can find the resources that you might need just to check on certain things. Feel free to contact anybody in procurement if you have specific questions. I can share one more thing if it's not too late or if it's okay. Under About Us, under procurement staff is who we are and where we are and all of that. This is generally, we have buyers handling different categories. So that's me. So I handle all of these categories, and that's my direct line. And clicking on that will give you my email address as well. But depending on what the category is, we have different buyers handling it. And this is where you can find who handles or who issues the PO or reviews the contract for these particular services. All right, I think that's all I had to share. But generally speaking, you can find, if you want also UF sales tax exemption certificate, you can go to the resources and click on there. You can find our sales tax certificate, any other forms, things like that for the campus is also provided over here. That's all I had from my end. I'm open to take questions if anybody have any questions. Once again, thank you for being here, and thank you for this opportunity to share from procurement perspective of the process, the life cycle, and everything else that applies for public procurement. I hope it made sense and makes it simple for you, but if you have additional questions, I'm more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute.
Rejoy, would you mind clarifying what it takes to register for the supplier bid portal? Do I have to be a UF supplier, or can I just be a firm that's looking to?
Yeah, for public, thank you. That's a good question. For public solicitations, you do not have to be an existing supplier. Anybody can participate in public solicitation, even if you don't have a contract. That's how once you participate in a public solicitation, and if you're able to go into the page, register your company there, you can participate in public solicitation. It's open for the public, and you do not have to have an existing contract to participate in a public solicitation.
Does anyone else on the call have any other questions? All right. Well, thank you, Rejoy, for such an informative presentation. I would say before everyone ends, I do want to, let me share my screen very briefly. We have an upcoming event where we're partnering with procurement services as well as business services and having our upcoming UF Opportunity Fair. Oh, and you know what? Let me go ahead and I'll stop the recording. Give me just a second.